Hi, I'm Cautex, and on this episode of the latest in Warrior Theorycrafting, I'm going to be talking about the Kyrian legendary that Blizzard finally added to the 9.1 PTR. This new legendary, called Elysian Might, increases Spear of Bastion's duration by 4 seconds, and while you remain within the ground effect, you gain 25% increased critical strike damage. When assessing this legendary, there are clearly two parts to look at: the value of the increased duration and the value of the increased crit damage. Starting with the duration increase, adding 4 seconds doubles the duration of the ground effect, and by extension, doubles the amount of periodic damage it does. Based on the PTR values of a character I just swapped to Kyrian for testing, if you completely ignore crit chance, this legendary increases the DPS of the ticking effect by around 60 DPS per target. Now let's consider the impact of the increased crit damage. Currently, it's fairly typical for both Arms and Fury to be sitting around the 20 to 25% chance to crit range, and because of the increase in item level that we're going to be seeing over the course of 9.1, let's assume that you have 25% chance to crit when doing the math. Now, I think that it's worth noting that this increased crit damage interacts multiplicatively with your normal crit damage. So normal crits would typically do 2 times the damage, but when this legendary effect is active, your crits will do 2.5 times the damage of a normal hit. So, if we take the uptime of the spear, which is 8 seconds every 60 seconds, which equates to 13.3%. If we then multiply our uptime by our crit chance, which in this case we're going to say is 25%, and then we multiply it by 1.25, which is the effect of the increased crit damage, that tells us that we would get an overall DPS increase of around 4.15%. Now, if you consider that top Kyrian warriors of both specs are achieving around 5,500 to 6,000 DPS on single target fights, 4.15% equates to around 228 to 250 DPS. Now, the observant among you might be thinking, wait, what about recklessness? Because that increases our crit chance, and that would line up with every other Spirit Bastion. If you take that into account, then the benefit of this increased crit damage comes out to around 5.82%, or 320 to 350 DPS. Adding the 60 DPS gain from the increased duration to the DPS gained by our increased crit damage, this legendary is going to be worth somewhere between like 288 to 300 DPS in a single target scenario. If you consider that based on the analysis done by Arkham Tyros, Sinful Surge is worth around 700 DPS, this makes this legendary seem exceptionally weak. However, this legendary does scale in AoE, as the damage it does depends on the number of targets present. So let's consider that. One potentially strong synergy for this legendary is soulbinding with Mika Nikos due to the new Effusive Anima Accelerator soulbind trait. This trait can allow you to bring your Spirit Bastion cooldown down by up to 20 seconds if it hits 5 targets. If you assume that that spear is going to hit 5 targets every single time, while being soulbinded with Mika Nikos, then this legendary would be worth closer to 650 to 800 DPS, depending on how you want to account for the lineups of other cooldowns such as Warbreaker and Colossus Smash or Recklessness. Now, there are a couple other interesting combinations and synergies to consider that I didn't really dive deep into. For example, if you're running Rend with this legendary, then your crit damage multiplier can be increased to 2.75 as opposed to just 2, which could make for some extremely strong burst potential every minute in PvP. So, after all this, what are my thoughts on this legendary? I think that the most compelling use that I can see for this legendary beyond PvP, which I admit that I know basically nothing about, is using it in Mythic Plus. The new Soulbind traits given to Mika Nikos work quite well with this legendary, and while I'm not totally convinced that it's going to be better than Karain in First Strike, I do believe that it could be fairly close. But what are your thoughts on this legendary and all the other ones now that we actually can see all 4? Or, tell me why my opinions are dumb. Alternatively, if you have any ideas for topics that I should be researching for the next episode, or if you've done some theory crafting yourself and would like me to highlight your findings, then let me know in the comments. Lastly, I just want to say thank you for watching this video, and subscribe for more.